Hello everyone, my name's Josh Drastic and welcome to another suggested video. This video was suggested to me by someone from the Arabic video that I did a while back about the trailer for, what was it, Mother of the Sky or something, Mother of the Heavens. I can't remember the name. But this video is top 10 famous and deadly swords and their history, which sounds honestly pretty interesting. Because I did comment while making that video on that mother thing that the sword just didn't make any sense to me. The sword, because I mean, you go and you look at this sword and it's a centaur. It is initially a centaur, but the centaur has like this weird like U in the very tip of the blade, and I'm like, that doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem useful at all. At all, especially if you're trying to stab someone, then you got 2 points. You gotta try, because the more points there are, it's kind of like with Wolverine's claws. Technically, he wouldn't be able to stab mostly anything with, because he has 3 points of contact, and since he has 3 points of contact, there's more surface than there would be if he had 1 point of contact. Same process of me thinking, and I've never seen a sword that was curved and had this weird thing in it. So this person politely informed me, very politely in fact, that this sword was very special. Very, very special and very powerful. And he said, go check out the third sword in this video. So I will. So I shall watch. We shall watch this video and we shall look at what the third most powerful sword is. And if it's the sword, that's pretty interesting, and I know better now. So thank you very much. Thank you for the suggestion. And without further ado, here we go. But before we begin, as always, guys, I would like to inform you about my shirt. If you want to know more about it, there's links in the description below. What else? Obviously, copyright thing. I dealt with that a while ago, but, just for people who don't understand, there it is. And without further ado, let's begin.
You're watching Top 10's Net, and in the video
he's
today,
a bit
we're
quiet.
looking at the top 10 famous and deadly swords and their history.
I'm very sorry, I can't do anything about that. He's very quiet. Just turn up your headphones and I'll be quiet.
Number 10. Tomoyoki Yamashita's sword. Tomoyoki Yamashita was a general of the Japanese Imperial Army during World War II. He became known during the war after conquering the British colonies of Malaya and Singapore, ultimately earning the nickname the Tiger of Malaya. After the end of World War II, Yamashita was tried for war crimes relating to the Manila Massacre and many other atrocities in the Philippines and Singapore. It was a controversial trial that ended with a death sentence for the man. The case changed the United States rules in regard to command responsibility for war crimes, creating a law known as the Yamashita Standard. The sword.
Interesting.
During his military career, Yamashita owned a personal sword that contained a blade manufactured by the famous sword maker Fujiwara Kananiga.
That's a
sometime
fancy
between
looking
1640
sword right there.
and
I'd
1680.
love to own
The weapon
that.
had its handle remade in the early 1900s. The samurai sword was surrendered by General Yamashita along with his army on September 2nd, 1945. It was taken by General MacArthur and given to the West Point Military Museum, where it remains today. The sword is one piece in a great collection of military arms housed at the West Point Museum.
God, it's
Number 9,
beautiful.
Curved saber of San Martin. José de San Martin was a famous Argentine general that lived from 1778 to 1850. He was the primary leader of the southern part of South America's struggle.
If you don't know much about me,
San
I'm a knife
is a South
nerd.
American
I love
hero
knives.
and the first
I love
protector
knives.
of Peru.
I'm not a knife
Under
nerd,
the
but I
lead of
love
San
them.
Martin,
I
Peruvian
love
independence
goofy
was
looking
officially
ones. I love
declared on
fun
July
looking
the
ones. I
28th,
love the
1821.
Karumba.
In the state of
I
Argentina,
have
the
mostly
Order
all
of
of
the
them. I have like a
Liberator, General San Martin,
12-inch
is the
one as
highest
well.
decoration given out.
It's basically like a
The
sword.
One of the most cherished possessions of José de San Martin was a curved sword that he purchased in London. San Martin admired the saber's curved blade and felt
he
that the weapon was
purchased it in
maneuverable
London,
and
so
ideal for
technically
battle.
anybody could
For
own
this
this.
reason, he armed his cavalries of granaderos with similar weapons, which he deemed important for charge attacks. The curved sword stayed with San Martin until his death and was then passed down to the General de la República Argentina.
It's so
Don Juan
beautiful.
Manuel de Rosas. In his will, San Martin referred to the sword as the saber that has accompanied me throughout the War of Independence of South America. In 1896,
Fun fact, my grandmother actually owns a sword. She was gifted it by a Arab prince, I believe, Islamic prince, if I'm correct, because I went to an Islamic thing back in school. I went to an Islamic location, and it it had the same sword. It had the exact same sword inside of a case. And I was telling the instructor, I was like, oh my gosh, my grandmother literally owns this. She was gifted to it when she went to somewhere, or she, I can't remember really the story, but I know she was gifted this. And I was like, look, it's the same thing. I have it on my phone. Look. She wasn't impressed, but, whatever.
The weapon was sent to the Natural History Museum in Buenos Aires, where it remains today. In the 1960s, the sword was stolen on 2 separate occasions, and this caused the museum operators to build a screened gazebo to protect the artifact.
Well, you should. If you have the sword out in the open, of course someone's going to be like,
was an
ooh, I'll
ancient
take that.
kingdom located in southwest Korea.
No.
At its peak in the 4th century, Baekje controlled colonies in China and most of the western Korean peninsula.
God, tell me it's a straight sword.
In 372, King Gyeongsuko
I'm kind of tired of all the curves.
To Eastern Jin, and it is believed that a 7-branched sword was created and given to the king as a sign of praise. The sword. The weapon is a 74.
Oh, I know about this thing.
Iron sword with 6 branch-like protrusions along the central blade, which is 65.5 centimeters.
Now it's heavy.
The sword was developed for ceremonial purposes and was not built for battle.
No.
In 1870, a Shinto priest named Masatomo Kan discovered 2 inscriptions on the 7-branched sword. One of them states, at noon on the 16th day of the 11th month, 4th year of the Taiwa era, the sword was made of 100 times hardened steel. Using the sword repels 100 enemy soldiers, appropriate for the polite Duke King. The 7-branched sword contains many statements, but the most
ugly. Not gonna lie, it looks like a cactus, and it looks like a phallic-shaped object that women might use.
Historical link shows that a relationship did exist between the East Asian countries of the era. The original 7-branched sword is currently in Japan.
It's
and
a sword.
is not on display to the public. Number 7, Wallace sword. William Wallace was a Scottish knight who lived from 1272 to 1305.
Now, obviously, I'm not shitting on the sword. I'm not. Okay, I'm not. I'm just saying, looks a little weird. Probably very difficult to make. Very appreciative. Looks like a cactus. Again, I can't get behind the fact that it doesn't look like a cactus. Like a kid drew a cactus, and that's what it would look like. But probably very difficult to make, and I applaud your effort. But it looks like a cactus, and I can't get past that. I'm very sorry.
A resistance against England during the wars of Scottish
Isn't it so weird? Like, it's so weird. Every time I think about this, it's so weird, because these people, they're just people. They're just people, and they have no idea what we have become as human beings. And I wish I could just go back in time and tell one of them, be like, dude, look at what we become. We are a disgrace to you. Compared to who you are like this rugged, like, warrior, adventurer. You ride horses every day. Like, you guys fight and die just from common diseases. And we have gluten-free macchiatos. I don't even know if that's even a real thing. We have gluten-free macchiatos, and people can't even live without those. I mean, you have to think about that, right? Like, you have to think about this, and, perspective-wise. Like, if we went back in time, we would not survive at all. We would not survive. Now, not even the toughest, hardest people of our time would survive back then. I doubt it. Now, obviously, take The Rock, for example. The Rock would not survive back then. At all. And, you see him as this, hard-working, insane, but he's a businessman. He works with his phone. He works with technology. He's a very. Would he be good for back then? I have no idea. I don't know. Now, obviously, if you take a fresh person from our time and put them back then, they're not obviously going to do good. But if The Rock was made back then, he might do good. Maybe if he was born back then, he might do amazing. He might continue he might be the strongest person. You never know. But yeah, no, if we take anybody from our time right now and put them back then, they would not survive whatsoever. I don't care. Just saying we have become so weak as a species.
which were waged during the late 13th and early 14th centuries.
God,
During
we've
his
become
lifetime,
weak.
William Wallace was appointed the Guardian of Scotland. He led an infantry of soldiers who engaged the enemy in hand-to-hand combat.
Oh, is this
the prized possession of many of these soldiers was their sword. In order to survive on the battlefield, one had to be a talented swordsman. In 1305, William Wallace was captured by King Edward
He
I.
reminds me of Juji. Why does that remind me of Juji? That's weird. That's weird. A lot of people are going to be like, that doesn't look like Juji at all. You can't see the similarities that I'm looking at right here? You see the hair? See the wrinkles? Feel like it's Juji. Just saying. Blue eyes.
Swordsman.
Thin eyebrows.
In 1305, William
Juji.
Wallace was captured by King Edward I of England and was executed for treason. Today, William Wallace is remembered in Scotland as a patriot and national hero. His sword is one of the most famous in the world.
Really?
The sword. The William Wallace sword is located at the
Why?
National Monument in Stirling, Scotland. The shaft of the sword measures 4 feet by 4 inches in length, 132 centimeters, and it weighs 6 pounds. That's 2.7 kilograms. The sword is said to be the weapon that Wallace used at the Battle of Stirling Bridge in 1297 and the Battle of
A 6-pound sword. Now, actually, that's not that heavy. That's really not that heavy at all. At all. But from the looks of it, holy cow, that thing is massive, dog. That's a long sword, basically.
Back in 1298. The pommel on the sword
Very
consists of an
fancy.
onion-shaped piece of gilded iron, and the
Very
grip is
fancy
wrapped
pommel.
with dark brown leather. The hilt or handle that is currently on the Wallace sword is not the original. It is believed that the sword has been modified on several occasions.
What the?
After the execution of William Wallace, Sir John de Menteith, governor of Dumbarton Castle, received the sword. In 1505, King James IV of Scotland paid the sum of 26 shillings to have the sword binded with cords of silk. It is said that the sword underwent many changes, which might have been necessary because Wallace's original scabbard, hilt, and belt were said to have been made from the dried skin of Hugh Cressingham, who was an English commander. Number 6.
Ew.
The sword. El Cid is a man that was born circa 1040 in Vivo, which is a small town about 6 miles north of Burgos, the capital of Castile.
You never see a horse with a mane like this. Like, it's beautiful. It's a very beautiful depiction. But normally their hair is always straight and goes down over
The
their
Kingdom
neck.
of Castile was one of the medieval
Or
empires
it's really
of
short.
the Iberian Peninsula.
It's never really
During
curly.
His lifetime, El
Doesn't
Cid
look like
became
a
successful
mullet.
military leader and diplomat. He was named
That
the
horse
Chief
has a
General of
mullet.
the
See,
Army of
this is what you see when you think of horses. You don't think of mullets. Like, that's a mullet, man. That's a mullet.
The Kingdom of Castile
This horse has
was
a
one of
mullet.
the medieval empires of the Iberian Peninsula.
And I don't know
During
why.
his lifetime, El Cid became a successful military leader and diplomat. He was named the chief
That-
general
that's-
of the army
that's
of
a horse
Alfonso
hair.
VI
That's
and
horse
became
hair.
a Spanish hero.
That's horse hair.
El Cid
That's
was
horse
the
hair.
king's
That's
most
horse hair.
valuable asset in the fight against the Moors.
I should be
He was a
listening,
skilled
but I can't
military
help.
Strategist and strong swordsman. The sword. El Cid owned and used many different swords in his lifetime, but the two most famous are Colada and Tizona. Tizona is a
God,
sword
I
that was
wish
used
swords
by
were
El Cid
more
to fight
popular.
against the Moors. The weapon
I
is one
really
of Spain's
do.
most cherished relics and is believed to have been formed in Cordoba, Spain, although considerable amounts of
Because you know,
Damascus steel can be found
if
in
you
its
like
blade.
swords nowadays, it's
Damascus
more like,
steel was primarily
oh,
used
you
in the
probably
Middle
go
East.
to events
Tizona is
with,
103
you know,
centimeters.
people who cosplay and stuff, and you know, or not cosplay, but real life like role play or whatever. I don't even know what it's called. I don't. That's how out of it I am. I wish swords were more like popular in a way that was more accepted by society. Because I mean, they're so cool. They're just such a cool thing. They're so cool. And it's just a piece of steel, really. But that's not what makes them cool. What makes them cool is the little intricate stuff that people put into them. You know, I could be given just a normal sword and I'd be just ecstatic. But if someone gave me like this sword that like they intricately like piece together and like has groovings along the side and like a cool pattern on the sword blade, I'd be like, what? How'd you do this?
5 years later, the French Senate proclaimed him emperor. In the first decade of the 19th century, Napoleon
See,
and the
hit
French
horse hair.
Empire
Goes down.
engaged
It's
in
not a mullet,
conflict and
just goes
war
down.
with every
And
major
that horse
military
eyes.
power. Ultimately,
Terrifying.
a series of victories gave the French a dominant position.
That's a better
in
horse.
continental Europe.
That's a better
But
horse.
as
The other
history
horse
would later
wasn't
repeat itself in 1812,
such a good
the
horse.
French
This is a
began
good
their
horse.
invasion of Russia.
That's a good depiction
the
of a
decision
horse.
to invade Russia marked the turning point in the fortune of Napoleon. In 1814, the Sixth Coalition invaded France.
Napoleon
and
actually
was
wasn't
captured
that
and
short, I
exiled to the
believe.
island of Elba.
He wasn't
would
actually
escape,
that
but
short.
ultimately died in
No,
confinement
a lot of
on the
people
island of St. Helena.
make jokes about it, but he
Historians
wasn't
regard
actually that
Napoleon
short.
as a military genius and a man who made strong contributions to the operational art of
He was a military genius, but man, that hairline, he could have gone bald and nobody would have known the distance.
war. The sword.
I'm
On
joking.
the battlefield, Napoleon carried a pistol.
Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Look how cool that is. Look at the intricate design. And, like, that's what I mean. Like, that's so neat. That's so neat to me.
A sword. He owned a large collection of arms and artillery. His weapons were one of a kind and included the best materials. In the summer of 2007, a gold-encrusted sword that once belonged to Napoleon was auctioned off in France for more than $6.4 million.
Why would you buy
The sword was used...
Why would you buy that? Why would you buy that? Why for $6 million? Why? But why? Why? No, like, actually, why? Oh my God! So much of that money could have gone somewhere else that was actually useful. Oh, you don't need that sword. Oh, it's a beautiful sword, yeah, but like $6.2 million. What? Why? Oh, that hurts my head. Oh, I could $6.2 million. Dude, you know what kind of car you could... Wait, did he say 6.2? Am I getting that wrong? Please tell me I'm getting that wrong.
Art of war.
Dude, you know what kind of car you...
Napoleon carried a pistol and a sword. He owned a large collection of arms and artillery. His weapons were one of a kind.
You know what kind of car you could buy with that?
In the summer of 2007, a gold-encrusted sword that once belonged to Napoleon was auctioned off in France for more than $6.4 million.
6.4! Oh, God, that hurts my insides. Oh, it's spit on a piece of steel, dude. It's spit on a piece of steel. Oh. Like, okay, if it was bought by a museum, understandable why they would pay so much. You know, it's a very... Who owned it was very important. But if you take that out of the consideration, right? Who owned it doesn't matter at all, right? If you take that into consideration, that who owned it actually really doesn't matter, you're spending $6.4 million on a sword. It's an out-of-date weapons thing that you'll never use. You'll probably leave it on a shelf. If I ever buy something for $6.4 million, I am going to use that thing every single day of my life. It better be the thing that keeps me alive. Like health insurance. But I am being completely serious here. That is way too much money. God. Okay. Now, I know I'm making a big deal about this, but you gotta think. You know what you could buy with $6.4 million that's not a sword? Like, you could buy a yacht, dude. You could buy a yacht. You could buy a private jet, dog. You could buy an entire fleet of tiny jets. Dude, save that money. Give it to someone who needs it. That sword is not worth it. Oh my god. You just, oh my heart.
The sword was used by Napoleon.
Someone's gonna comment down below and be like,
Napoleon presented the weapon to his
It's
brother
beautiful.
as a
It's very beautiful.
The sword was passed down
God,
from
it's not worth
generation to
$6.4 million.
generation, never leaving the Bonaparte family. In 1978, the sword was declared a national treasure in France, and the winner of the auction was not identified. Number 4.
The winner!
Sword of Mercy.
The winner of the auction was not identified. So you're telling me someone just bought this thing to stick in their old crusty basement? Probably in their castle somewhere that they own with like 20 cards. Dude, I'm telling you right now, if I was ever rich, I would live in a trailer. Now, granted, it'd be a very fancy trailer, but I would still live in a trailer. Because if you think about it, You don't need that much. You don't. That's why I love the guy who created 5-Hour Energy, because he spends most of his money on innovation, on making new stuff. That's why I love Elon Musk. He spends most of his money on making new stuff. Obviously he probably has a very nice house, very nice cars and stuff, but a lot of his money, he doesn't take a lot of it. He just puts it back into the industry and remakes it. And that's what I enjoy. I enjoy that. I love that. I love that in those kind of people. We need more people like that. We need less selfish people. People who spend this much money on a sword that are going to stick in their basement. Not worth it, man. Just saying. Just not worth it.
The Sword of Mercy is a famous weapon that once belonged to Edward the Confessor.
I don't know who that is.
The Confessor was one of the last Anglo-Saxon kings of England before the Norman conquest of 1066.
Wow.
He ruled from 1042 to 1066, and
He
has
old.
been characterized by the crumbling disorganization of royal power in England.
Well, duh.
Shortly after Edward the Confessor's death, the Normans began to expand.
God,
into
look at that.
England,
Chainmail?
the infamous William the
Useless.
Conqueror. The Sword. The Sword of Mercy has a broken blade which is cut off and square. In 1236, the weapon was given the name katana and has since been used for royal ceremonies.
It's not a
In ancient
katana.
times, it was a privilege to bear the sword before the king. It was considered a merciful gesture. The story surrounding the breaking of the weapon is unknown, but mythological history indicates that the tip was broken off by an angel to prevent a wrongful killing. The Sword of Mercy is part of the crown jewels of the United Kingdom and is one
Fancy.
of only 5 swords used during the coronation of the British monarch. The weapon is rare, and only a small number of swords to survive the reign of Oliver Cromwell. Cromwell is known for ordering the melting down of ancient artifacts for scrap gold and metal. During the British coronation, the Sword of Mercy is wielded as the monarch bestows knighthood upon the recipient of honor. Number 3.
Dude, why would you
Zulfikar
destroy
Scimitar.
ancient artifacts?
Zulfikar is the ancient sword of the Islamic leader
All right.
Ali.
So we've finally gotten to the sword. This is the ancient sword of who? Zulfikar Ali? Who?
Mercy is wielded as the monarch bestows
This is what
knighthood
this guy
upon the
wanted me
recipient
to
of honor.
watch.
Number 3. Zulfikar Scimitar.
Oh, this
Zulfikar is the ancient sword of the Islamic leader Ali.
So, Islamic leader Ali. It's a scimitar, not a centaur. I got that completely wrong, which I'm very sorry. But as you can tell, I'm an idiot. So, here's where I was very confused. But now that I see it in person, now that I see the drawing of it, it's a very thick blade with 2 spikes at the end, and 1 spike is actually longer, which is very important. That's not what I saw. So now that I see the sword, I see the implication, I see how useful it is, and I see how tactically advantaged it is. This right here, this giant V, is very useful. You could catch a person's arm, a person's blade in there, twist it, and possibly make them fumble with it. But here's the weak point. Here's the weak point in this. See this? That point right there, that will crack. That will crack the sword in half. That will crack the sword. You see the little line right here? This is like the spine of the sword. This right here, this is like the spine of the sword. Right there, right in the middle. And you have this very vulnerable area right here. And if a sword hits that with enough force right down the middle, that thing is going to crack. It is bound to crack. But also, that's obviously a weak point, but it's still fine because it's still a sword, still useful, even if it does crack. As long as it just doesn't break in half, you are okay. So this sword could be made thousands and thousands of times, and it wouldn't really matter. Now, this is where I was a little confused, and I was talking about Wolverine's claws, because Wolverine has 3 points of contact, and 3 points of contact is very bad, because then you can't go very deep, because, it's harder to push forward. Don't know why I just did this motion, but you guys can play with that in green screen all you want. So seeing that one edge is actually longer than the other makes a lot of sense, because then that means there's only 1 point of contact that gets there first, and the second point of contact is just there for damage. It's there to rip you out. You stick the first point in, and then the second point gets there, and you can twist this thing, you can slice this thing down, very useful. very useful. So I personally didn't see the entire picture of the sword. Now, I get why they showed the sword, because the sword is a very important artifact in history, which is amazing. Now, if you want to know more about swords, I watched this one guy. He's called Shadowversity. I suggest you go look them up, or him up. He talks a lot about swords. That's why I know a little bit about swords. I know basically nothing compared to him. But if he talks more about stuff like this, you might enjoy it. So I suggest you go figure it out down below, especially if you've watched this far into the video and my ramblings and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, and I love this writing. It looks like artwork on this thing. It looks so cool.
Cousin and son-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad. He ruled over the Islamic Caliphate from 656 to 661. By some historical accounts, Muhammad gave Zulfiqar to Ali at the Battle of Uhud. Muhammad admired Ali's power and strength on the battlefield and wanted to present him with a cherished weapon. The sword is a symbol of the Islamic faith and is admired by millions of people.
Interesting.
Zulfiqar is a scimitar which
See this? That is not as far as I wanted it to be, and it's not as thick as I thought it was. This is a little concerning. This is very breakable. You could easily break those two ends off.
A West Asian or...
Because you see that's so... See the spine. You can see the spine better in this, actually. You see the spine? You can actually see the spine. You see the spine? Now, one hit straight down the middle could crack that spine somewhere, weaken it somehow, and that sword just becomes useless. That's why I said no. That's why I was like freaking out about it. Because that's so dangerous. That's so dangerous. And technically, you don't even need this to be sharp right here. You don't need it to be sharp, because this is the part that's going into the person's body. And technically it's a slashing weapon because it's curved. It's a slashing weapon. It's more for slashing, not for stabbing. But, I mean, they obviously thought of some stabbing because they made the ends very pointy.
South Asian sword with a curved blade. It is said that Ali used the sword at the Battle of the Trench, which is a famous siege attempt on the city of Medina.
So a lot thinner in this.
Muhammad, Ali, and other
there's
Muslim
less
defenders
curvy.
Built trenches to protect Medina against the much larger
hilt's very
Confederate
small.
cavalry. The sword,
actually, that hilt's very big for his hand.
conflicting images of the famous scimitar sword exist. Some of them describe the weapon as having two parallel blades.
Conflicting. Okay, so this is a very...
emphasizing its mystical abilities and speed, while others portray Zulfiqar as a more traditionally shaped scimitar. Some
That's what I think it is.
Historical drawings depict the sword with a split V-shaped blade.
I don't know about that. That's just not...
According to the 12 Shia, the weapon survives today and is kept in possession of Imam Muhammad al-Mahdi. The weapon is part of the famous collection called Al-Jaffa. Al-Jaffa is a mysterious Shia holy book. It is composed of 2 skin boxes that contain the most important artifacts.
Skin box?
Muhammad and...
You mean boxes made out of skin? What is wrong with people and making boxes out of skin, making hilts out of skin? What is wrong with people? Especially if you heard those murders where like people like to put the skin on them. What is wrong with people? What's your fascination with skin? It's just, technically, your skin is just the biggest organ in your body. Yeah, that's literally it.
Ali. The collection has been passed down over the generations, with each new imam.
He looks like he doesn't look that happy, actually. Why doesn't he look happy? He's holding a very nice book. He doesn't look that happy. He's not smiling. It doesn't look like he smiles a whole lot. Actually, no, it does. You can tell by the wrinkles in his eye that he squints a lot. So I don't know if that means he smiles. Like you can already see. Nah, not even really. I'm too young. But it doesn't look like he smiles a whole. I don't know. But that poor man, his wrinkles. He needs some better skincare, my dad. And that, you need to get rid of that. That could turn into cancer. You don't want that. You don't want that. That could turn into cancer. You might die. That's not good. That's no good. That's no good.
Receiving it from his dying predecessor. The contents of Al-Jaffa are quite impressive, but they are not...
Dying predecessor. I swear, if he died from cancer, I'm not going to even say I told you so. I'm just going to be like, I'm very sorry that I even said anything.
public viewing. One section
I
of the
hope
book
that wasn't
describes
his
the Islamic
predecessor, and I
rules,
hope that wasn't
directives, and
right.
matters
I really
surrounding
do.
wars, including a bag that contains the
God,
armor and
that
weapons
was-
of Muhammad.
that was
Zulfikar is said to
stupid.
sit among the priceless artifacts. Number 2. Honyo Masamune. Masamune was a Japanese swordsmith that is widely regarded as one of the world's greatest metallurgists. The exact dates for Masamune's life are unknown, but it is believed that he worked from
slam it.
1288
Yeah.
to 1328.
Yeah.
The
What
swords
is that
of
little
Masamune
tap?
have a strong reputation for superior beauty and quality. He rarely signed his works, so it can be hard to positively identify all of his weapons. The sword.
So he never, he
Most
really,
famous of all Masamune swords is named Honyo Masamune. The Honyo Masamune is so important because it represented
at
the
that.
shogunate during the Edo period.
oh, it's just a piece of steel. It's literally just a piece of steel, dog, that's slightly curved. And really sharp, but slightly curved. Now the hilt is a little more interesting, but still, your hand's gonna slide up that. You're gonna cut yourself. Some sword's gonna slide down that. It's gonna cut your hand off. You have no pummel at the end, so your hand's gonna slip.
The sword was passed down from
Now there's an actual pummel there, still, or there's a hilt, but it's still very small, not very useful. So just saying, and see how his hand's all the way at the bottom there. Shouldn't be like that. There should be a pummel, just saying, so it can help you stay.
one shogun to another for generations. In 1939, the weapon was named a national treasure in Japan, but remained in the key branch of the Tokugawa family. The last known owner of the Honyo Masamune was Tokugawa Imasa. Apparently, Tokugawa Imasa gave the weapon and 14 other swords to a police station in Japan in December of 1945.
Awesome.
Shortly thereafter, in January of 1946, the Meiyuro police gave the swords to Sergeant Coldy Beemore, U.S. 7th Cavalry. Since that time, the Honyo Masamune has gone missing, and the whereabouts of the sword remains a mystery. Honyo Masamune is one of the most important historical artifacts to disappear at the end of World War II. Number 1.
Well, that sucks.
Joyeuse. Charlemagne is a man who was born circa 742. He is one of the greatest rulers in world history and became king of the Franks in 768. In 800, he was named Emperor of the Romans, a position that he held for the remainder of his
In
life.
literal
In the Holy
800.
Roman Empire, he was known as Charles I and was the first Holy Roman Emperor. During Charlemagne's lifetime, he expanded the Frankish kingdom into an empire, which covered much of Western and Central Europe. Charlemagne is regarded as the founding father of both the French and German monarchies, as well as the father of Europe. The sword. Joyeuse is the name of Charlemagne's personal sword. Today, there are two swords attributed to Joyeuse. One is a saber that is kept in Vienna, while the other is housed in the Louvre in France. The blade on display in the Louvre claims
Now
to
that's a hilt. That's a hilt. Now that's not very comfortable, but then again, you might be wearing gloves. This looks like the Infinity Gauntlet sword. I swear, dude, look at it. It's the Infinity Gauntlet sword. It's the Infinity Sword. It's the Infinity Sword. It has the Infinity Stones right here. You know, it's got the one for the thumb. It's got the green one right there. It's got the red one. It's got the blue one. It's got the yellow one. You know, it's got all the Infinity Stones on there. It's the Infinity Sword. God, you guys are gonna hate me for that.
be partially built from Charlemagne's original sword. The sword is made of parts from different centuries, so it can be hard to positively identify the weapon as Joyeuse. The hilt of the sword includes a manufacturing date of around the time of Charlemagne. The heavily sculpted gold pommel is made in two halves, and the long gold grip was once decorated with diamonds. Charlemagne's sword appears in many legends and historical documents. Bullfinch's mythology described Charlemagne using the Joyeuse to behead the Saracen commander Corsable, as well as to knight his friend Ogier the Dane. After the death of Charlemagne, the sword was said to have been contrarily held in the Saint-Denis Basilica and was later taken to the Louvre after being carried.
I bet you I could design a hilt. Now I'm listening, but I bet you I could design a hilt that's better and easier for putting the sword on your back. So instead of going like this, you'd have to swing it around like this and keep it straight. All you would have to do is make a mechanism where you hit it. It would be open. So how you would open it is when you pull up on the sword, it releases pressure from inside the hilt, and the hilt will like pop open, and then you can just lift the sword out. But in order to put it away, you'd have to throw it behind your head, and as long as you keep it straight up and down like this, you bring it around your head, and you like. and it would like not slide into place, but there would be an area where if you hit it, the thing or the hilt would close like this, and then the sword would stay, and then you would just push down to lock it into place, and then all you'd have to do is pull up on it, and then it would pop open, and then you could swing it around. I don't know why anybody hasn't made something like that. I guess, they never got around to technology.
Coronation procession for French kings.
Enough.
So I really hope you enjoyed that video. If you did,
God, I was already at the end and I started talking about it too much. Anyways, guys, this video is way too long and I might not upload it. But if you have watched this far, thank you very much. I appreciate you as a human being. You are all amazing. You are all beautiful. And as always, guys, stay strong, everyone. Stay safe. Wear your seatbelt, wear your helmet, wear your mask. Don't put the flashlight behind you. Don't look in the haunted mirrors. And as always, have a nice day. Again, I ended it with die. Die. Have a nice day. Die, mate. Die. Why? I don't know.